A lot of people are interested in how the LG C1 compares to the LG C10. Is the LG C1 an upgrade, or is it best just to get the C10 and save the money? Or maybe something else? I'm going to show you the differences in the LG C1 and the C10, and I have a Sony A90J along for the ride because I think seeing these three TVs side by side will give a potential buyer of any of these OLEDs, even the LG G1 and the Sony A90J, some food for thought. So let's compare. What's up, I'm B the Installer. I'm going to jump into the three-way comparison of the LG C1, C10, and A90J. And the reason for having the A90J in the mix is because it's nearly twice the price of the C1 and C10. So I think it's helpful to see what TV is right for you. Sort of a Goldilocks and the Three Bears situation. And there'll be people that think all three TVs look fantastic, and I wouldn't argue. Or some of you may have eyes for only one of the three. But all of you should smash the like button when you're feeling this video. And if you want to be notified of my uploads, including the live videos I've started to stream, you should definitely subscribe, and more importantly, set the notification bell to all so that you get fair warning when I'm about to go live or upload a video. And I'm interested in seeing in the comments of which one of these three TVs is right for you, or if you're getting another. So let's really quickly start with the most beneficial features outside the TV before I dive into the three-way picture comparison. So the LG OLEDs have the magic remote, and to be honest, it's not that magical. I spent the last year wishing for something better than the LG C10 remote. Both remotes are still a bit bulky and it makes a lot of noise when clicking around, but I would say that the LG C1 remote is a bit nicer, and when you try to press enter on that center button, it doesn't spin around in circles and have you end up on a different screen. Neither of the LG remotes are backlit, which is one of those things that I like about the Sony A90J, even though it's quite long. I would say for people watching an OLED in the dark room that the backlight is a more premium feature than the cursor on these LG remotes, but at least this new C1 remote ditched that bright red cursor, and now it's a more subtle white outline, so it's not quite as distracting. All three TVs sit relatively low to the ground, but the LG C1 and C10, which are basically the exact same build, have a heavy and sturdy stand in the middle of the TV that keeps the TV about an inch off the table while directing the sound from the speakers on the bottom out toward the audience when the stand is on. The LG C1 has slightly better sound than the LG C10. It has a more consistent volume between different apps, and either TV could be used without any soundbar or AV system. On the other hand, the A90J feet are wide at the ends, so you basically need to have a larger table than the TV for this to work and look good. But they can be set low or raised up a few inches. The TV speakers on the A90J are probably the best I've heard on a TV in years. The sound comes out from the screen itself, and the bass resonates from behind the TV. So design alone, there's some minor features between the Sony and LG, but the LG C1 to C10, very little has changed. When turning on the TV, the differences continue on all three OLEDs. The older WebOS of the LG C10 was pretty basic and unorganized. I do like how it had a simple pop-up from the bottom of the screen. This is all our family needs because we're merely using the OS to play a movie or pick another source, so it worked. Now the C1 has a full screen homepage. It's more comprehensive, and for those using the WebOS Smart TV as your main source, it's probably an upgrade. I just don't like having to exit back to the LG channels and then press home again and then forget that the home button pulls you all the way out of the source that you're on. My point is that the CX OS wasn't great, but most people have other devices, and I'm not sure an upgrade was needed. Or if it was needed, I'm not sure that the C1 WebOS 6.0 is any better. The Sony A90J and all Sonys have the Google TV this year. And again, it's a change from their Android OS of old. I like the Google TV, but it also does a full exit to the home area. But when you press the source button on the A90J, it has the recently used apps in the source options without leaving the current source. The Google OS also organizes the content of the apps that you actually use. So once you log into those, it then populates with trending movies and shows from the relevant apps. Overall, the OS is not likely something that will make you pick one of these TVs over the other, but maybe that A90J backlit remote would be. So to continue the comparison but give you a bit more entertaining visuals, we'll look at some SDR, HDR, and gaming content like I do in all my comparison videos. I went over some of the stills of this content on my live stream, so again, that's why it's good to subscribe and set the bell to all and, like and all that. So in SDR, I had been impressed with the LG C10 post-calibration. Prior to it being calibrated, I felt the white looked blue-gray, especially when watching sports. And that combined with some of the crushed shadow details on the C10 made me think that it was a bit lackluster when comparing it to a really bright QLED like the QS8000 I had before. But getting that white balance and gamma corrected by calibrating the TV, I felt it's pretty legit for watching sports and shows. When comparing to the C1 and the A90J, I see they all look very similar in brightness, but not so much in the details. So that's one thing people have been asking me about. Does the LG C1 have better shadow detail over the C10? And the answer is, well, yes. A little better detail in the LG C1 over the C10, and this is not calibrated, and I'm interested to see if the C1 further improves over the C10. I think it's likely that it will. And then on the bottom you can see that the Sony A90J isn't brighter in SDR, and some have measured it to be less bright, but it retains more detail in general, and definitely in the shadow detail over the LG OLEDs. This was also true with my OLED battle video last year, where the C10 had the worst shadow detail behind the Vizio OLED and then the Sony A8H showing more. Upscaling and motion on these three TVs in SDR was not dramatically different, but the C1 was a bit of an improvement on the C10, and it upscaled a bit more like the A90J. The best way I can explain it is that it seems like the C10 processor is trying to exact every single pixel and therefore creating a bit more noise and degrading the upscaling a bit. There's still some noise on all of them if you're up close, and there's fast-paced sports, but some of that is just the source and the fact that, well, all these TVs are still trying to take a pretty low-res picture and making the magic happen. This is something I like with LG for when it comes to really good HDR and Dolby Vision processing, where it looks super crisp, but when it's SDR, it can look just a bit worse. The motion on the LG C1 and C10 look basically the same, and all three of these TVs have some stutter that can be improved by minor motion smoothing. In all honesty, they all look pretty good in SDR, and if someone was buying the LG C1 or the C10 for watching SDR, I say you really can't go wrong with either one, but the LG is slightly improved upon the C10. If you're looking at getting the A90J just for SDR content, it seems like there's a bit more detail added, but besides that, it would be a really expensive TV for just watching news or golf. When comparing these three TVs in HDR, I started by setting them to very similar Dolby Vision settings. So let's first just compare the C10 and the C1. In most of the HDR, it's remarkably close. I had a really hard time differentiating the two in Dolby Vision. Even when splitting the screen in half and then combing back and forth, I found both the C1 and the C10 to have very good 4K HDR picture quality. And the only thing that's really evident to me is that there's just a bit better processing on the C1 and a bit more shadow detail. But still, both of them look fantastic. Then when you bring in the Sony A90J, you can finally see the major benefit of this really expensive OLED. In order to show all three TVs, I had to expose the camera to the brightest of the three to show the differences. The reason I think that's important when comparing these two TVs or in any of the past is that when I'm watching the LG C10 or the C1 or the Sony A8H, I had just wished there was a bit more punch in the picture quality and overall HDR experience. And now I feel the Sony A90J does offer that with its increased brightness, even if it's not the 1300 nits that was released earlier on the Vivid mode. No matter what setting I had the A90J on, it is brighter overall, and it's brighter in the most important areas that lacked before. Do you see what I'm saying? The highlights are just much better on the A90J. But it does come with a big price tag, and I'll explain that in a second. As far as the motion in HDR and overall, I think the Sony A90J is easier on the eyes when watching movies, and it's more noticeable with these lovable panning shots. Now you can reduce the stutter on all three TVs as needed by adding a bit of motion smoothing, as I said, in SDR, and I'm kind of in the middle between the purist kind of look and the soap opera effect. I feel like these OLED TVs often stutter too much for my liking without any motion interpolation, but this full soap opera effect can be very dizzying. But something that LG dominates in is the gaming features of their OLED TVs. So the LG C10 was already the best gaming OLED TV, and in my opinion, the best overall gaming TV in 2020. So without anything added, it's already a top 5% TV in 2021, even being a year old. But now the LG C1 is a tick brighter in HDR gaming, and now adds the gaming optimizer for further ease of use when playing. Both TVs have 4 HDMI 2.1 ports, VRR of all kinds including G-Sync and FreeSync Premium, and the Sony A90J has, well, 2 HDMI 2.1 ports, and I guess VRR is still to come. And then when looking at these three TVs against each other in game mode, I noticed that the A90J is not any brighter than the two LG OLEDs that are half the price. And the picture quality in game mode was fantastic on the LG C10, as I said. But as you can see here, it gets better on the LG C1. And then the A90J has more detail yet and clearly looks the sharpest to me. It also looks to be the most colorful and has the most contrast, whether it's in the shadow detail or in the highlights. In all honesty, all three TVs look great in game mode, and I'm certain that almost everyone would be completely satisfied with the picture quality while gaming on all three. And I think the overall preference comes down to more than just this example. So now let me explain what I think the takeaways are from the comparison of the C1, C10, and A90J. So first, let me address the LG C10. I'm extremely happy with the LG C10. I've had it for about a year now, and without these other TVs here, I'm happy all day. I watch sports and news in a moderately lit room, and it looks great, but it looks even better since it's been calibrated and the white levels were balanced out. When we watch a movie in Dolby Vision or when we're playing games, fantastic. And for the remainder of the year, while it's available, it's a fantastic deal, and I would not hesitate to tell anyone to buy it. And if you're looking at it from the perspective of what will you lose if you get the C10, I would say that you're unlikely to notice the increase in brightness, and the remote and game optimizer are probably not worth the significant savings that you could put toward a 5-year extended warranty or a modest soundbar or some other purchase. So definitely take the opportunity to get this C10. As far as the LG C1, I think that it's a slight improvement over an already great TV in the C10. Those things I just said are not worth upgrading aren't the entire story. As I stated in the LG C1 full review, we're already starting off in a good place with the C10 when compared to a majority of the TVs out there, and then improving even if it's just a little bit. The SDR upscaling looks a little bit more even and crisp. The HDR and gaming looks a bit brighter, and there's a bit more detail in the shadows over the C10. And as the year goes on, I think the price will be trending similar or better than that of the LG C10 of last year, because of other TVs on the market like the Sony A90J, A80J, and the LG G1. So the LG C1 may be the best buy of the year because it's sort of lost in the mix while being a fantastic TV. So I definitely recommend the LG C1 as the year goes on, and it makes me kind of question the value of the Sony A90J a bit. So let's look at that. The Sony A90J is a fantastic TV. One of the most noticeable differences that I've seen in all content is amazing picture quality and amazing detail, both in the shadows and highlights. And while it's too smart to just sit in that 1300 nits all day long, it has increased brightness over any OLED I've seen to date, at least in HDR content. Those HDR highlights are quite remarkable, and it seems that this is what you're paying for. Because in SDR and in gaming, the picture is sharper, but the TV is no brighter than the C1 or the C10. And the speaker quality on the A90J is much better on or off the stand, with much more immersive sound coming directly at you from the screen itself. But is it truly worth 2 times the price of either of these TVs? That's difficult to answer. The fact they haven't shored up the gaming features like we had expected by now, and the fact that it's got good but not great SDR brightness and for gaming makes it easier to recommend other TVs for a majority of the people out there who aren't willing to spend $4,000 on a 65-inch OLED. There are TVs like the LG G1, which many of you watching may be considering, and I feel that, or even the G10. The G10 was literally the same TV as the C10, but with the flat wall mount version. This year the G1 is brighter than the C1, so just that alone is great to hear for this gallery series. Added to that brightness is the same new processor, great gaming connectivity and features, and a very sleek wall-mounted look that's only $300 or $400 more than the LG C1, while being a full $1,000 less than the comparable Sony A90J. So I'm definitely excited for the G1, and that's why I'll be reviewing it soon and comparing it against the A90J as the best overall TV of the year. But then on the other hand, if you still prefer the Sony look and detail, and maybe the A90J is just a bit too much, you also have the A80J. And I think that the A90J and A80J will have that advantage when watching HDR movies and overall picture quality, but for $4,000, you know the A90J will be purchased for the premium, and maybe the A80J will be another TV in a sweet spot. So discuss below, where is the sweet spot? What will be the best TV of the year? Let me know below. And as per usual, I really appreciate it if you can smash the like button on your way out, subscribe and set the bell to all if you want to know when I go live or upload a new video, and here, watch another video so you can be the installer.